Hello, greetings, and welcome. In the last episode, we talked briefly about the history of life on Earth and gave some educated guesses about factors affecting the evolution of intelligence. In this episode, we'll be fleshing out the base of my model for the evolution of intelligence. The idea that life on Earth underwent a series of hard steps in order to eventually result in intelligent life is an idea that's been prominent in the literature since 1983, when Brandon Carter published his paper, The Anthropic Principle and Its Implications for Biological Evolution, in the journal Philosophical Transactions of the Royal Society of London. The basic idea is that there were a number of difficult hurdles to intelligent life developing on any planet. Some proposed steps to look at are the initial arisal of life from non-life, abiogenesis, the ability to photosynthesize or get energy from the sun, the evolution of sexual reproduction, and the development of intelligence itself, which I would define as the ability to communicate and to develop and maintain arbitrarily complex tools. Before going any further, I must clarify that all of the novel work I've done is based on a large number of assumptions. I don't believe these assumptions to be correct, but I believe they are the most reasonable assumptions given what we know about our own evolution. And further, it was completely necessary to make some assumptions in the development of my model due to the way it operates. Further, I believe that many of the errors in my assumptions will cancel out. For instance, some of my assumptions may be conservative, some of them may be a little bit less conservative, resulting in some of the steps occurring faster in real life than in my models, and others occurring slower than in my models. Finally, note that if I plug the initial conditions of Earth into my model, it must result in human beings arising precisely 4.54 billion years after the start of the planet, and 4.60 billion years after the start of the Sun. Getting right into things, I propose a model with 6 major steps, including 3, quote, easy steps and 3 truly, quote, hard steps. For the easy steps, I modeled them as normal distribution functions, with a standard deviation proportional to how long it took on Earth. For hard steps, I modeled them as a log normal distribution, with the mean of each distribution equal to how long it took on Earth. A log normal distribution has a long tail, representing that it's unlikely for the step to take a very short amount of time on any given planet, but there's a higher probability that it doesn't happen as early as it could have, or as early as it did on Earth. My first step is abiogenesis, the first time life arose from non-life. The earliest possible evidence we have for life goes back to 4.28 billion years ago. The latest time estimated for abiogenesis is 3.77 billion years ago, putting the middle number right at around 4 billion years ago. This is only 540 million years after the formation of the Earth, and given the temperature of the early Earth and the presence of late heavy bombardment, I will argue that this step was easy. If we assume the Earth was sterile for the first 250 million years of its existence, as I will, then it only took 290 million years for life to randomly arise, likely consisting at first of a simple protein that could pull molecules from its surrounding to create new versions of itself. What I'm showing on the screen is called a probability distribution function. It gives the probability that abiogenesis would have occurred at any certain point in time. To get the probability, you take some finite length of time and integrate, that is, take the area under the curve. The resulting area gives you the probability of life arising in that period. Since it is assumed that given enough time life would eventually arise, the total area under the curve is 1, meaning 100%. The next step in my model is a hard step I've named photogenesis, or the first evolution of organisms able to do photosynthesis, to convert sunlight into energy. This is an essential step in the history of life because life needs a constant input of energy in order to create new life and evolve. On Earth, photogenesis took somewhere around 600 million years after abiogenesis, occurring at around 3.4 billion years ago. The exact time frame is very unclear for events that happened so long ago, but these are the assumptions I'm making for the model. The distribution for photogenesis is shown on screen, and the meaning of the distribution is scaled the mean of the distribution is scaled to equal the time that it happened on Earth. The next hard step is one I named oxygenesis. Unlike its name, this is not the point at which photosynthesizers were able to produce oxygen. Oxygen was a waste product for over half of Earth's history and highly toxic to life in the early ocean. Oxygen is, after all, an oxidizer and will readily destroy most molecules over time, whether in the form of fire, rust, or in the controlled destruction of glucose that keeps modern animals alive. Oxygenesis I'm defining as the ability of organisms to thrive in an oxygen environment. Prior to this point, if a group of organisms evolved to create too much oxygen, it would create a pocket of high oxygen and kill all organisms in that area. However, sometime around 2.46 billion years ago, atmospheric oxygen levels began rising. Some organisms had gained the ability to be immune to oxygen as a toxin. This led to the event known as the oxygen catastrophe, which killed about 80% of all life on Earth. Much like photogenesis, it's not clear why it took so long for this to occur. But it paved the way for later metabolic advancements, such as the ability to use atmospheric oxygen as a fuel, and opened up many metabolic pathways that would have been closed without the presence of atmospheric oxygen. I'm specifically excluding the origin of sexual reproduction here for a very simple reason. The basis of sexual reproduction is exchange of DNA. While the mechanism of meiosis was an amazing innovation that allowed eukaryotes to mix their DNA with another organism to create novel offspring, in essence, DNA swapping is simple. Many prokaryotes do it by direct DNA transfer through conjugation or transduction. I believe that sexual reproduction would develop naturally many times over given the presence of complex metabolic machinery. The next step I include is eukaryogenesis. However, since eukaryogenesis occurs shortly after oxygenesis, I treat it as an easy step. In order for oxygenesis to occur, significant complex machinery already existed in those pre-eukaryotes. And while eukaryotes may have only evolved once and should thus be special, as you will see later, the way in which I combine these different distributions means that I don't need the probability function for eukaryogenesis or oxygenesis to be precisely accurate, as long as I'm correct in assuming that there is only one hard step and one easy step between the two of them. The next step is the hardest step in my whole model. At this point in time, around 1.8 billion years ago, life on Earth represents a significant amount of biodiversity. All current domains of life exist: eukaryota, archaea, and bacteria. Photosynthesizers exist, sexual reproduction exists, and the existing life is immune to oxygen as a poison. In short, everything is primed for the evolution of complex multicellular life. However, with the exception of simple multicellular life such as microbial mats, we see very little actual evolutionary change for eukaryotes for the next billion years during the so-called boring billion. Imagine, if you will, a full billion years on Earth, where life was largely limited to the oceans and single-cellular life floating in the top meter of water. No fish, no dinosaurs, absolutely no life on land. Many hypotheses have been proposed regarding the slowdown of evolution of life during this period, with one of the leading ones being that the sulfur-loving prokaryotes dominated the oceans, which remained relatively free of oxygen during this period. Whatever the true reason, for our purposes, we will assume that it simply took a significant amount of time for the metabolic machinery of eukaryotes to diversify enough to support the development of extremely complex organs, such as a stomach to digest food, fins to swim through the water, a heart to pump nutrients around the body, a liver to filter out toxins, bones to form the backbone of an organism, kidneys to filter and eliminate waste, and a brain to coordinate all the other organs. Thus I arrived at the distribution shown on the screen to represent neurogenesis, the time between when eukaryotes or something like them first arose and when the very first creature with something akin to neurons developed. On Earth, this was shortly before the Cambrian explosion, and represents a time of great potential for life on the planet. Finally comes the one we're ultimately interested in, sapiogenesis, or the development of intelligence. On geological timescales, this happened very quickly. And here I am assuming that once neurogenesis has occurred, life will very quickly fill the planet's niches that had been left empty for billions of years while life diversified into its current incarnations. The brain will quickly develop into millions of different forms corresponding to millions of different types of organisms. In my view, intelligence itself is inevitable once animals or something like them arise on a planet. Indeed, while humans were the first intelligence to arise on Earth, I believe they won't be the last. Given the incredible mental capabilities of dolphins, of ravens, of chimpanzees, of octopi, and of many other animals, I believe that a second intelligent life form would have arose on Earth in the next 100 million years if humans had not. Conversely, if the dinosaurs hadn't gone extinct, I believe an animal descending from them could easily have become the first intelligent species, long before humans filled that role. Philosophizing aside, on the screen is the model I used for sapiogenesis. Now that I have all these distributions, how do I combine them? Well, there's only one way you can combine them. Given that they're probability distributions, and that they occurred in sequence, you must stack them on top of each other. For photogenesis, you must assume that this distribution starts only from the year that abiogenesis actually occurred. This means you must put the photogenesis distribution starting from every possible year that abiogenesis could have occurred. Then, you scale these distributions according to the probability that abiogenesis actually occurred during that year. What you're left with is a new and wider distribution, representing the probability of when photogenesis could have occurred. Using this as your new base, you can do the same thing again. You take the distribution for oxygenesis and distribute the base profile according to the possible range of years when photogenesis could have occurred. If you follow this process through all 6 steps, you finally arise at a time distribution for when intelligence could have arose on Earth, with the time it actually did arise occupying the mean of the distribution. I'll leave this on the screen for just a bit so you can look at it. As you can see, the vast majority of the distribution lies between 3.5 billion years and 6.5 billion years from the Earth's origin, with the present day being 4.54 billion years. If we assume the increasing luminosity of the sun will eventually boil the oceans and kill all life on Earth a billion years from now, there was a 7.3% chance at the outset that intelligent life would never have arose on Earth. And that is the basis of my model for the evolution of intelligent life. Now, you may be wondering how we can apply this model to other planets on other star systems, and I'm going to have to ask you to slow down. We've assumed by default that the speed of evolution will always be the same, and will be unaffected by factors such as the changing luminosity of the sun, the changing reflectiveness of our atmosphere, and the presence of other factors such as planet size and the existence of plate tectonics. In the next episode, we'll outline a model for the changing habitability of a planet as a function of its initial conditions, and we will use this habitability model to adjust our model for the evolution of life, calibrating the base models that we found in this episode so that given the initial conditions of Earth, we once again arrive at an average time of 4.54 billion years from Earth's beginning until the emergence of intelligent life. If you like this video, be sure to leave a like, comment, or subscribe for the rest of the series. Bye for now.